welcome you all to concurrent paper session 1B here at the GLPA conference. My name is Mike Bastard. I work at Long Lake Planetary there for about 13 years, very part-time. So anyway, try to stay on schedule today. So our first presenter is, what's his name? Derek Demeter, and his paper is on choosing your own planetarium adventure.
Let's stand here. Okay, so I gotta. So, hey everybody. So I'm a little bit of an outsider. I'm actually from the SEPA region, and I'm the president of SEPA. And I'm coming here today to, to check out the GLPA conference, and it's been awesome so far. But my talk that I'm going to present to you today was actually a talk I did yesterday at the GLPA meeting. But this one's a little bit shorter and condensed. But basically what it is that, how many of you remember, show of hands, those old Choose Your Own Adventure books? Back in the day, right? Yeah. So I used to love those books, and I used to love like the Nintendo ones where you like kill Mario and let Luigi win at the end of the book. It was great. So long story short, I like to have these really awesome discussions with my brother, who is completely opposite of me. He's not at all science. In fact, he's the one who made my wooden tie. But we have these talks, and a lot of times he'll ask me, hey, Derek, what if you did a planetarium show where you just talk about how we actually know the science that you talk about? Because in these shows you always mention that, speed of light is X, 186,000, miles per second and all that. But how do we actually know that? And so that got my wheels turning, and talking with my colleague, Mike McConville, we started coming up with this idea that how cool would it be to do a show called How Do We Know? And instead, we decided that how about we kind of almost create a different type of show, a democratization of a show called, since all we do at our planetarium are live interactive shows. We have 50 different shows that we produced in-house. All of them are done live and interactive. So we were thinking, how can we go above and beyond that? So what we did is we decided to, both of us have backgrounds in teaching classes, and we've been using these clickers, response, these RF clickers, from Turning Technologies for our assessment of students in our classrooms. And we decided, what if we were to use these clickers as essentially a way for people to poll kind of the steer of the show. So what we're doing is we're basically creating a show where you get to choose the progress of the show. What do we do next? And so we decided to use that, and this is Mike McConville here, is my colleague, and we're just being rained on with these receivers. We actually purchased 60 of them from a mini grant that we were awarded. Basically, the college, Fall and Spring, offers $2,000 mini grants for projects. And so we applied for one, we got it, and we're basically being rained by clickers. And so how does the clickers work? Well, basically what we do is we give them to the audience when they come into the show. What we decided to do is customize the clickers by putting down essentially scientist names. So we go from Ibn Haytham to Copernicus to Newton to Laviette to Herschel to all these different scientists. And so when we're handing them out, we're giving them little tidbits about these scientists and what they discovered and all that, kind of just make it customized. Oh, I got a DeGrasse Tyson, or I got a Mike Brown, or I got a this or that, and I killed Pluto and all that, So it's kind of fun to see people's knowledge when they're getting these clickers as well. Let's see how much they know too, which is really fun. And then this picture over here is just a guy using the clicker. So the show that we created was called How Do We Know? And basically looks into the science behind the many scientific principles that we take for granted. And what we did is we actually using our social media as well as our email mailing list and all that, we asked the audience, or we asked our people that like our page and stuff like that, what kind of questions they would like to see. And so we got hundreds of questions, and we decided to narrow it down to about 100. And each show that we did this for about 2 months during our Saturday feature. We picked 10 out of those. We randomly picked 10 out of those 100 questions to give. So basically how it works is we teach them how to use the clicker response system. Once they know how to use it, basically it's 1 to 10. Basically what they do is they just hit 1, 2, 3 for their choice. And to control that, to make sure these people aren't just constantly clicking them, the Turning Technologies is a plugin in PowerPoint, and we have the ability to make them active and inactive, which means that when we're not polling, we can make them inactive so if people are hitting the button, they're not actually causing any issues with the response system. So what we do is we bring up the questions of the show. So in this case, we have, how do we know the universe is expanding, black holes, origin of the moon, how make stars shine, Earth being hit by an asteroid, shape of the Milky Way, dark matter, exoplanets, etc., speed of light. So what the audience will do is they'll get to pick their first choice. We usually do about 5 or 6 questions per planetarium show, because we usually spend about 10 minutes on each question. So what we do is we give them a 30-second count. We make it active. We give them 30 seconds. Do that with this little fancy schmancy timer. And we use this off of PowerPoint, which is great. We're using our multimedia projector. We also use our full dome system, which we have UniView. And we also use our MS8 star projector. So this is a very much a multi-technological show. And then what they do, and then what they vote, and then we show the results. So when we make it inactive, the poll's closed, we are able to show them the results. As you can see here, number 1 is the first choice. And during the GLPA conference, we had somebody ask, do I prioritize the questions? No, I randomly put them in. So one's not, always the one that people are going to choose, just happened to be for that particular case. So what we do is we go into the actual talk. We talk about the science. In this case, we talk about the rise of the Harvard computers and looking at variable stars, and we then we talk about Hubble and his observation of these variable stars and other galaxies, and we talk about blue shift and red shift, and we go into all this science, and then that kind of explains the discovery of the universe being an expansion. And we use our full dome for that. We also use our multimedia projector to show pictures and visuals and things like that. And in the GLPA conference, we had a chance to go a little bit more in depth on that. But if you want to know more, you can always ask me. So we're going to talk about data now. Not this data, actually, but what we're going to do is what's going beyond this. So the nice thing is we realized this was kind of a beta test for this new planetarium response system. So the end goal is that we're also going to be using this to assess our students that come to our field trips as well as our classes at the college. And so that way we can get data about how well our students are learning in the planetarium, and we get instantaneous feedback to how we can modify the shows. And the nice thing about essentially creating your own shows and doing them live is that you can always constantly modify the shows each time you do them. So if you find out a certain group of students are just not doing well on a certain topic, we can modify that based on what we have with the response system. Now, what's the future of this? Well, as far as public shows, we're working on a series called the Stellaris Interplanetary Cruise Line series. It's our Protocol series. The first one we did was Protocol Mars. What we did is we actually have theater in the planetarium, so I dress up like a cruise director D, and we have pilot Mike, and essentially what we're doing is we're taking you all on shore excursions to the planet Mars. And in this show, the audience gets to pick what destinations they want to go. Now, another thing that solves about this is retainment. How do you get people to come back to your planetarium over and over and over again? It's kind of that whole thing, and I kind of took this idea from that whole Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland where you have 3-4 different ways you can go. Well, in this case, we have about 50 different locations on Mars we can go to. We only pick 10 of them each show. So if you come back again, we'll go to another location and or another series of locations. So you never know what's going to happen during each show. And during their time run, we've done Protocol Mars, which now we're working on Protocol Jupiter for the Juno mission. We've had 20 or 30 people come back every single Saturday to see the show because they want to know what we're going to be doing next. So that's a lot. That's a huge amount of people coming back every weekend just to see what we're doing. Either that or you don't have a lot of things to do, or we're doing something really cool. I mean, it could be one or the other, or it could be both. It is what it is. So basically, long story short, we're really excited about this. We've just had the system for about a year now. We're continuing working on building this planetary response system for many different other avenues in the planetarium world. And I appreciate you all today, Tom. I know we don't have so much time to talk, so I'm really excited about hearing some questions from you guys about this. So,
you still got about 3 minutes.
That's good. I prefer those 3 minutes with questions. So any questions about or any comments or anything about the system or about anything I talked about? Yes.
We did the same thing with the solar system show for our school program.
Okay, awesome.
We actually toyed with the part that we weren't going to let everybody know what the answer was until it showed up. That was too much stress on the presenter.
Okay.
All of a sudden, planning to just show up. Okay, I'll do it now. Do you have any problems with the clickers not coming back, or?
Not really, no. They've been very, very responsive. No pun intended. I mean, they're a response system. But no, they've actually been very good. They've been very, Turning Technologies has built a great product, and they're pretty reliable. And we use them for, getting classes and stuff, and we never seem to have any big problems with them. Occasionally, we have an issue with one or so, but usually we'll just give them another one, and it'll be fine.
How much do you guys interact with it? Does the polling do the change on the program for you to go forward, or is it something you guys?
We have to build a macro. What we do is once we're done with one question, we then close it out. We close out the PowerPoint for a second. We have a black desktop screen, so it looks like there's nothing. And we go to the section of the show that we want to continue at. So there's a little bit of playback and stuff that we have to do. But what we do is we build macros to where if we click on at the end of that slide system, it goes back to another slide and gets rid of that particular. So we had to build a lot of different macros to jump here and there. But the nice thing is once it's done, and we don't have to worry about it. So it was a lot of tedious stuff, but it is what it is.
Do you have any evidence that this has helped you repeat visitation?
Well, as far as the guests, we've had a large return guest. We also had people review us and say they really enjoy the shows. They really enjoy the fact that they can come back and learn something new that they didn't learn last time. So it's that surprise anticipation of what to expect that people are getting really excited. And we do kind of, sometimes on social media, right, these are the questions we're going to have this week. And so if people really don't like those questions, they don't have to come back. But we've been having a lot of return visitors, and we see the familiar faces over and over again. So I guess that's our data, is that we know that people are coming back from it.
That question, you have a question in your survey at the end where you ask, have you been to one of these shows before?
No, we haven't, but that's actually a good idea for future use. Yeah, definitely. So, of course, that's something we could definitely implement. What we also do at the end of the show is that, for example, if somebody doesn't get a question answered, we usually say at the very end, is there any questions that you've been dying to know? And then we give people the opportunity to ask us. Or sometimes if we have time, we say, all right, is there any other questions we didn't ask that you're interested in? Depending on our limitations of our full dome system and what we have available, we can explore that. Anything else? All right, well, thank you guys for your time, and thank you.
All right, we are just a little bit ahead this morning, but we'll go ahead and do some introductions here. This is the 9:45 to 10 o'clock session. Ann Bragg is going to be talking about illustrating the observational evidence for the geocentric and heliocentric models via full dome video. And I was not even going to try to remember that from back there to up here. So, Ann, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, and good morning. I've been told I can remove the microphone from the stand, and so hopefully this will be a little less awkward than having to run back and forth. So thank you all for coming to my presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit more about a project I'm getting started on more than something that's completed, and I'm hoping to get some maybe feedback or input from some of you. So many of you have already received a survey that I was handing out. If you didn't, I have more up here, and when we get to that part, I'm happy to run around and give those to people. So just for context, for those of you who are not so familiar with Marietta, Ohio, we are in the southeastern part of the state. This is very much the Appalachian part of the state. It's not the wealthiest part of the state, I would say. Our town has a population of about 14,000, and we are the county seat. So we're the largest place around, and we get about 8,000 visitors per year in the planetarium, which is not so large compared to some of the organizations that you're representing, but given the size of our town, that's pretty good, I think. Here are a few pictures from our planetarium. So we are pretty lucky to have the planetarium that we do, given the size of our town and the size of our college, which has about 1,200 students. We had a very successful alumnus donate about $3.5 million because he thought we should have a planetarium. So that is why we exist. We have a 40-foot dome, which again, the other planetariums of that size in Ohio are at much larger institutions. And we are lucky enough to have a Kronos Digistar 3 hybrid. So we have both the nice star field of the optomechanical, but we also have the digital capabilities. Unfortunately, what we lack is much in the way of staff. So we have one part-time director. That would be me. I say part-time because although I'm full-time at the college, I teach almost the same course load as professors who are not directing the planetarium. So the amount of time I'm given to do this is fairly small. I would probably characterize it as about 1/8 time if you look at what they let me out of because of the planetarium. Nevertheless, we do a lot in there. We teach college classes, including, of course, introductory astronomy. We have lots of school group visits. That's more than half of those 8,000 people are coming through school groups, mostly in the spring, of course. And we also do public shows every month, sometimes once a month, sometimes we'll have 4 or 5. Particularly in December, our holiday program is very popular, so we offer many of those. So the thing I want to talk about today is about how we're using our Digistar and how I hope to use our Digistar in the future, because I think it's pretty fair to say that we underutilize this resource. So we have generally used our Digistar in one of 2 ways in the 7.5 years that we've had it. So the first, I think, is pretty clear from what's up here on this slide. We use it to play back full dome videos. That is the main way that our Digistar system gets used, because pretty much every program that we do includes one of these. And so it would be pretty typical in a public show that we would give a star talk using the Chronos and looking at that sky, and then we'll fire up the Digistar and play a video. So we're not really taking advantage of any of its capabilities. The other thing that we do is sometimes we will use that for the star talk if we're wanting to fly around, if we have small children, if we want to take a perspective away from the Earth, zoom in on objects. And that is always done in a live mode, where the operator, who is often the same person as the presenter, usually both of those people are me, is sitting at the console, pushing buttons, typing commands, searching menus, kind of in real time, and doing things during the show. So for the most part, that works pretty well, but it can be a little bit problematic. So for example, when I have 5th graders in the planetarium, we talk about moon phases because that's in their content standards. And so I like to get us in a very special position where we're hovering under the Earth's south pole so we can watch the moon orbit without the Earth ever getting in our way. And of course, you got to get it oriented just right so the moon never drops off of the dome as it's going around. And so I will get all of this set up, and then sometimes I will start animating without making sure I'm in the right motion mode, and stars will fly wildly around the dome. Sometimes the Earth will go flying off to the side, and it doesn't turn out so well. Right? That doesn't happen every time, but it happens occasionally. And to be fair, the 5th graders love it when that happens. They find it very exciting. But then it's a little bit of trouble to try to get back to where I'm meant to be. And given that those school shows are very time constricted, you hate to waste time having things not go right. Right? So in general, there are a number of problems with doing everything in real time. And this doesn't just happen with these school group shows. It also comes up in some of the more complicated demonstrations I'm trying to show my introductory astronomy students in astronomy. Right? So I'm sure that a lot of these problems are really obvious, but just to, right? It's really easy to make a mistake. If you're just trying to put up a constellation outline, you're probably not going to mess that up, other than to maybe forget the deviation and put in the wrong constellation, which I've done a time or two. But if you're doing something more complicated, especially if you are both the presenter and the operator, and you are trying to coherently narrate what is going on in the planetarium and set things up verbally for the audience while also typing all these things in and trying to get everything just so on the dome. It requires a lot of prep time. Maybe the last 5th grade group where I did this moon phase thing was last month, and I don't remember exactly what I did. Maybe I'm demonstrating the phases of Venus to my introductory astronomy class, and it's been a year since the last time I taught that. So then I have to spend a lot of time making sure I remember how to do everything and that it's going to work the way I think it is. It's difficult to reproduce precisely. Not so important if I have a group that's just in there once, but if it's my class and I want to show them exactly the same thing a second time, maybe on the review for the exam day, I would like it to basically be the same thing I showed them before, because people just learning a topic get very confused if what you're showing them is different in some way that they don't quite understand. Finally, all these things that I'm doing in real time are totally inaccessible to anybody else who's operating my planetarium. I have a retired teacher who volunteers and gives some school group shows. She does a great job, but she is not a sophisticated user of the system and is not going to be able to try to do 4 or 5 things all at the same time to get this nice moon phase demonstration on the dome. Or even my faculty colleagues who don't even get 1/8 time to be in the planetarium. They just don't have the practice to be able to make things work correctly. The solution to all this is really obvious, right? We have a Digistar 3. Why haven't I scripted up all of this stuff so I can just push a button and have it happen the way I want to every time? Well, because it's very time-consuming, not just to script, but to just learn how to do that in the first place so that you can do it well. I think I mentioned 1/8 time, right? I don't get a lot of time dedicated to the planetarium, and most of that goes towards giving shows and towards keeping the thing maintained and dealing with issues as they crop up. Fortunately, I've reached the point in my time at the college where I'm eligible for a sabbatical, and so I'm actually on a sabbatical right now. And what I want to do, what I propose to do, is to create some materials for my planetarium for use in these kinds of demonstrations. I focused in my proposal on my astronomy courses because I thought that would be more appealing to the committee that assigns these things, right? Because it would be directly applicable to the college. But I also would like to create some things for these school group shows as well, and so on. So why this topic? Right, oh, that purple does not show up. So what it says at the top is why this topic, astronomy as a general education course. So again, I picked something to create that's relevant to my courses because, again, I thought that would be useful. It would be appealing to the committee that assigns sabbatical time. And I'm focusing on the geocentric to heliocentric transition and the observational evidence, because that's a really key topic in my course. So up here I have listed the goals of a general education course at my institution. This is cut right from our sort of, what do we call it, undergraduate catalog. There we go. So this is mostly taken by non-science majors, but we are supposed to provide an in-depth analysis of scientific concepts and the scientific method. So I think that this transition is a great example of the scientific method, because you can see how the observational evidence shifted us from one model to the other. Furthermore, it's a case where the observational evidence is actually fairly accessible to the students. It's not so abstract. It's not, this 10-meter telescope using a spectrograph that they'll never understand, at least during the time when they're in my course, taking this data that then is going through all this physics to understand. Like, this is stuff you can see, or that you can just point a telescope at something and look at it. It's pretty straightforward. But the students mostly haven't noticed this stuff. They just don't pay attention, right? And so the planetarium is an opportunity to show them this. And so this is what I wanted to focus on for my evidence. Now, what's next here? Okay, so the goals of this project, you can see that this improve the quality of my courses with these demonstrations, that's actually a little bit down on the goals list, because although I want to have these materials, a larger goal for me is to actually improve my knowledge of how to use the Digistar 3 system, because that's something that will be useful into the future. And again, it's something I just haven't had the time to do. I mentioned full dome video as well, because at the outset of this, I had this idea that I wanted to create these things in a full dome video format. And I still think I might like to do that, because I would like this to be as shareable as possible. And a Digistar 3 script is really only shareable with the few of us who are unlucky enough to still be running Digistar 3 now that they've announced 6. And so I'm still figuring out how realistic it's going to be to get this into a more shareable format. But I would like to share whatever I create with whoever would like it and can take advantage of that format. All right. Finally, I would like to be able to work with students in future semesters on projects creating stuff in the planetarium. And so the more I know, the more I can do that. All right. So I see we're about out of time. So this is where I had some questions for you, and that's where that survey came in case there wasn't a lot of time for verbal back and forth. I'm really curious what other people are doing in their domes. I'm curious what kind of content creation people are doing, if they're doing any at all, and what kinds of facilities these are that are doing it. Are there people in small facilities that are actually doing this, are they doing mostly scripting and doing things that way? Because I think I can accomplish my goals that way, except that it's going to be less shareable and maybe less usable in the day that our system dies and we have to replace it with something else, which is another reason I would like to have it be in a more universal format. I'm curious what tools or software things people have found useful in creating stuff. So with that, I think I'm going to stop talking. And
We're going to open it up to questions.
Yeah.
And I'll do my best to get to you if you have a question.
And I know not everybody got a copy of this, so.
Are you part of the Digistart research group? There's a lot of stuff that scripts that may already exist.
Right, so the question is about the Digistart users group. So I actually went to their meeting for the first time ever last month, because generally the timing of those meetings doesn't work well with the school year. So that was very interesting, and I got a lot of ideas there, and so yes, I am looking into some of that. But while I know there are probably some things there that I can just use, I also want to learn how to do these things. So a little bit of reinventing the wheel might be useful, just from the perspective of learning how to build wheels. Yeah.
I mean, to that end, we found that we've kind of restructured a lot of how we've been doing our shows. The real-time software is like getting more powerful and more everywhere. So now we're doing more, the vision that we're doing is like previous work, but now actual show production in these various real-time packages. And then maybe some minor digital tweaks in other software, like
Okay.
when it's all said and done. But I don't want to still go ahead and start free, but most of the systems allow you to do a fair bit.
No, as I've been investigating what the Digistart can do more, I've realized that a lot of the things I want to do, I mean, even if I want to have short video clips as part of it, I can just stick them in there and have them play up in real time. So, yeah, Mark.
So I think you identified a really important problem at the end there, is that the sort of Tower of Babel problem our community has, where we're speaking different languages, and it's not just the different vendors, like they're different versions of the same software, and it becomes really hard to share. So there's some efforts, some IPS-related efforts to fix that. In the last issue of the Planetarium, there's a paper by Lars Lindberg Christensen on this Data to Dome initiative that talks about sort of interchange format between different systems. Part of the origin of that was this project in Germany, where they're trying to share content between 4 different planetariums. They show the same show, and they do a little live interactive part, but they're on 4 different systems, these 4 different planetariums. So the idea is you have some way to describe it, and you can get back in the system. So this is just the beginning, but you're right, it's something we have to solve.
Yes, I agree.
And that's going to be the last question for this session. Thank you, Anne.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And if you did fill out the survey with anything that you think might be useful other than just a list of no-no-nos, if you could get that back to me, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the paper session 1B, the third topic this morning, and it's called How Do I Reach These Kids? Pokemon in the Planetarium. And the presenter today is going to be Mike Smale.
Take 2. Good morning. Welcome. Hi, my name is Mike Smale. I'm with the Adler Planetarium, Chicago, Illinois. And we are going to talk all about Pokemon in the planetarium, as you might have guessed from the title of the talk. Quick show of hands, who has or is still currently playing Pokemon Go on your mobile devices? All right. So we have a good mixed audience. We'll give a little bit of an introduction. I won't get too deep into gameplay mechanics and things like that. But effectively, Pokemon Go is an augmented reality mobile game that was released this summer. It encourages people to get out and explore their communities and parks and museums and monuments in search of characters from the Pokemon game and TV and film series. It's short for Pocket Monsters. It's one of those old weird Japanese anime show for those of you above a certain age. People in the game, you will go around and you will basically find these characters and attempt to capture them, to collect them. You will battle them against other characters and attempt to evolve them in some cases. And I will say right now, I am delivering this talk from quite a spot of privilege. The Adler Planetarium happens to be pretty much the best place in the city of Chicago, if not the entire state of Illinois, to play the game. These are all screenshots of the Pokestops and gyms, which are gameplay locations that are outside of the planetarium. The Charizard got cut off a little bit there on the side, but it's pretty awesome for those of you that are playing the game and drooling right now. But so it didn't take long. The game was released in the United States in early July. It didn't take long for museums to realize that, again, the gameplay mechanics are pushing people to museums and planetariums, people who generally would not necessarily go there otherwise. And what is, sorry, this is probably on me. I was messing with the zoom on this earlier. There we go. Trying to fill a little more of the screen. So very quickly, the PokeMuseum hashtag popped up. You'll see a lot of it on Twitter and Instagram. And this hashtags are sort of a searchable, a unified search term that you can use to gather information on the topic. For example, if you are posting on Facebook or Twitter or on Instagram about this GLPA conference, you should use hashtag GLPA 2016. But so it's been used a couple ways. One, people can use it to identify Pokemon characters they catch in various museums and various locations. And the augmented reality feature gives you the opportunity to use some great promotional marketing here. It allows museums to show their audiences what they might be able to expect to find in and around their site. It also can be used, here's one from the Toronto Historic Sites that kind of shows they're advertising some of what they have at their museum. Some of, you'll see some references to things called, might be kind of hard for you to read, called Pokestops and gyms. Those are kind of the two basic gameplay locations, and we won't get into that too much. But effectively, so there's this term you can search for now, and that museums and planetariums and schools can use this to promote and advertise and get new people into the location. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses. There have been some hiccups because, again, this is a mobile game, so you tend to be focused more on your phone and not necessarily focused on what's around you. So some museums obviously have had to maybe put up some signage, just kind of suggesting people, be conscious, be aware of where you're going. But they can also sometimes the signage can be informative. It can suggest various places around the museum to go look for, certain Pokemon have been spotted in this gallery over here. But we won't get into the bad too much. Quick show of hands again. Who's here from like maybe a natural history facility or anything kind of like that? Okay, Dan, we got one in the back. April, yeah, you count April. Yeah, you totally are. So something you can do, this is something the Field Museum in Chicago did. They went through, you probably have collections. You probably have animal collections. They went through and collected various specimens from their collections and then correlated them to various Pokemon characters. And they used this. They did a really nice blog post write-up about this. And I believe they take it out on the floor as well. So you can use to, again, make that connection with your audiences. Again, both your audiences, either your on-site or your digital audiences. Another one, the Royal Ontario Museum, they use this in a couple different ways. One, they will, these are some of their dioramas in the museum. They will push people to the dioramas of characters that are, again, related to characters in the Pokemon universe. They also do tours. They will take people around their museum. They will stop at the Pokestops, the locations in their museum, talk about the piece of art, the sculpture, the statue, the stuffed buffalo, bison, whatever it is. So giving people who are there visiting the chance to play the game, catch some Pokemon, also learn a little bit more about the museum, the natural world along the way. One more fun thing, the game spawned the creation of another hashtag called PokeBlitz, and this is heavily used by entomologists. The bug people love Pokemon because there are a lot of bug Pokemon. And so PokeBlitz is a hashtag that encourages people who are just out and about to take a picture of some sort of animal or bug or insect that they don't know, something they are curious about. They use that hashtag, entomologists monitor it, and then they pop in with a reply about what that actually is, what that item. And you can actually, it's really small here, but here's somebody popping in, clarifying that it's a spotted cucumber beetle on that leaf. All right, back to museums. So another thing that you can do to get sort of get people there is to host events themed around the game, to host meetups. You will find Pokemon players all over the place. Check there are probably Facebook groups or Reddit groups in your city, in your community, depending on the size of where you're from. This is the St. Louis Science Center on a Greens Place. They hosted a Pokemon night. This was, I think, back in August, but they had Pokemon pizzas. There are 3 different teams in the game, roughly kind of colored yellow, blue, and red, so they had sort of adult cocktails in colors. And they had hundreds of people come out, and what they did to get people to come out to their museum, for those of you that are familiar with the St. Louis Science Center, they have a pretty interesting outside structure. And I forget the exact term for what that kind of design is, but what they did was they said whichever one of the teams is in control of the gym at the Science Center at the end of the night, at the end of the event, we will light up the outside of the planetarium in your team's colors and leave it up all night long. So that was, again, part of the attraction. It brought people in, jumped into the game. And if you're wondering, of course, Team Valor won because Team Valor is awesome. We'll talk later. All right, so for any of you that are in the building that are maybe of the administrative sort, and you're kind of wondering, well, yeah, but how can we make money off this? It's a popular question, right? We're in the nonprofit world. Well, you have to know what you have, right? In some cases, so I'll give you sort of two examples. The Adler is actually a fairly small building. So most of our gameplay locations, you actually don't have to come into the planetarium to reach them. You can walk around the perimeter of the building and get them. So you don't have to pay to come in the building to do our things. Some of the bigger museums, like the Art Institute, have a dozen locations inside their building. You have to actually buy a ticket. You have to go inside to reach them. So what do you have you can offer? Is it something where you can offer free attendance? You just want to get people in the doors, get them to just see your sites, eat a meal in your cafe. Over the summer, you have air conditioning. That's a pretty popular thing to get people inside. You can offer charging stations, all sorts of fun things. Also, if you want to get them, if you want to get away from the game but get back to the planetarium, who has a laser system? Talk to your friendly laser vendor of choice. Pokemon characters and laser. And also, let's see if this plays right here. The Konica Minolta Planetarium Company, in addition to being an exhibitor and creator of planetarium equipment, also manages planetaria in Japan. And there are 2 digital full-dome planetarium shows featuring Pokemon. They were released in the mid-2000s. They have not been translated to English, but maybe talk to Konica Minolta and see if they're interested in doing something about that. They're called The Celestial Globe of Light and Shadow and Fragments of the Heavens. So obviously some astronomical capability. You picture this on a dome, you get the feel for what that might be like. All right, so I'm just about out of time. What's going to work for you? Honestly, you have to know your audience. What do you have? How are you going to be able to appeal to your communities to get them involved? Is it just enough for you to get them in the door? Do you want to go all out with tours, special events? It's about knowing your audience and making that connection, putting what you have together with what they want, what they expect, to make it a win-win situation for both of you. Thank you very much.
We're going to open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes. So there was a previous game called Ingress that used, basically people went around kind of with a Google Maps overlay style thing and marked these hotspots and locations. So they were all originally pulled from that Ingress engine. However, there's quite a bit of talk about, again, in trying to monetize the game, the creation of things like sponsored Pokestops to allow businesses and corporations, whoever wanted to set up a stop maybe for a period of time or at a certain location with their branding, their logo on it. There's a lot still to come. So the game is obviously in some communities, again, we're very fortunate in Chicago. In a lot of places, Pokemon Go has kind of fallen off the map completely. We still have hundreds of people, like nights and weekends, just walking around our building playing Pokemon, which is pretty cool. But there are things, there are new characters to be added, there are new gameplay mechanics. It's distinctly possible once the weather turns for a little bit more for the cold, you may find some more reasons to do some of those events to try to bring people back inside. So as the game evolves, it's constantly changing. New things are being added. No. So currently in the game itself, no. And there are some little things where, like, for example, our gym is a set of statues. It was a temporary art installation in front of the planetarium that's not actually there anymore. The gym is still there because it was based on that Ingress data from a couple years ago when the statues were there. That is sort of a still TBD, still to come. So keep your ears open and we'll see where it goes. Yeah. Awesome. Where are you? What Awesome. Very cool. Glad to hear. That's kind of an important thing. Any other? Do we have?
I think that was it.
We're good?
Just a little bit of housekeeping before the sessions over here will start back up at 10:45, and there are snacks and refreshments over at the planetarium. So, folks, have a good rest of the morning.